So I spent a lot of time the last few days, talking about this memorandum of understanding, talking about all the things that are wrong with it. And there was one audience member who mentioned in a comment that, I'm always bashing Trump's policies. Listen, I'm a huge supporter of President Trump, but I keep stressing we have to be honest about what we're seeing here. And as much as my position on the MOU, on this whole deal, this whole negotiation, is that it's built to fail, that it's going to fall apart sooner rather than later. The question then becomes, is there any chance of success? And what would a chance of success look like? And when it does actually fail, this is an even more important question. If and when, it's not even if, when it falls apart, what does that falling apart look like? Because the Iranians are for sure gaming this out. They're gaming out like they know they're blowing it up. And they know that they're poking the Americans, and they're denying that they agreed to the things they denied to, and they're not really going to allow the inspectors in, and they're going to play games with everything. And the question is, how are they gaming out what America's reaction is going to be? And I was thinking about this as I was watching a recent video of Victor Davis Hanson. I want to play you an excerpt of a recent podcast of his. And he makes a very interesting point near the beginning, but then he says some other things also through the clip. So I'm going to play it, and I'm going to stop at a few points and make some comments. So here's Victor Davis Hanson.
Missing a couple of premises. Number one, we don't know the extent of damage in Iran. No ground troops, no embedded reporters, no news, no internet there. Trump said $1 trillion or $2 trillion, maybe even if it's $500 billion, it's a 50-year investment in military nuclear industrial complex, and a lot of it's ruined. And they have been embargoed, and they've been sanctioned. Their assets are frozen. They're losing $400 million a day in revenue. So they're in bad shape. We don't know how bad they are. That's number one. Number two, Iran is not a protectorate of the United States. It's 93 million people. It's 1.5 times the size of Texas. And we don't have a good record of going in on the ground and managing a country. We saw that in Afghanistan. We saw that in Iraq. 7,500 dead, $2 trillion. And look at the Taliban is still in control. So we're not going to go in there and manage it. If you're not going to go in there and manage it, then your control over that regime is limited, especially when it has patrons that are nuclear like Russia and China, and they want to get back in. So my point is simply this. Can you stop them from enriching? Yes. You can say, we're going to bomb the moment we see you tamper with Pickaxe Mountain or any of those areas. And can we stop them from closing the straits? Yes, you have to open the straits or we're not going to lift the blockade. The key to all this memorandum of understanding is, will he use force when they inevitably cheat? So a week from now, if they think, well, we got a lot of concessions, we're going to send 3 missiles into the hated UAE, and we're going to send a couple more into Kuwait and have a big Shia arrested population. And if Trump says, oh, that was just a love tap, it won't work. He's got to say, okay, you sent 3, you're going to lose 10 bridges. You sent 3 against Kuwait, you're going to lose a power grid. He hasn't done that yet. People forget there's a whole list of targets that Obama went after in Libya and a whole typology that Clinton went after. We were in the same place in Serbia in 1999. It was not working after 60 days. We limited, and then all of a sudden Clinton went wild. All the bridges gone in the Danube, the grid. I wouldn't do it. He hits museums, he hits hospital, he hit everything. Anytime he heard they were using something that he thought he wouldn't hit, they hit, and that stopped him after 78 days. My point is,
okay, this is a huge point he's making here. What he basically just said, I mean, this is almost a quote, maybe this is a quote of what he just said, I didn't memorize it, is that the whole question is going to be, is Trump going to use force when they play games? Is he actually going to use force? And it can't just be a love tap. It can't just be a little bit. That's the whole name of the game. But I want to modify what he's saying here. Because I don't think that the Iranians consider a few missile strikes as a reason to capitulate to any of the demands. We are in exactly the same place strategically, as we were before the whole war started. The whole buildup of everything in the Gulf, massive, the biggest military buildup in decades, and Trump wondering why, Witkoff admitting that Trump is confused, why haven't they capitulated? And I argued on this channel, in the Jerusalem Post, on other shows, I said they do not want to capitulate, so much so that they'd rather go to war. Even though they know they're no match for the American military, they'd rather go to war than capitulate. Because damage is not as fatal to their regime. Damage from bombing is not as fatal to their regime, is not as much of a danger to their hold on power as capitulation to American demands. That was true then, and it is just as true today. It is just as true today. If you'd ask them today, would you rather give in to the American demands or have them bomb you some more? They will choose getting bombed some more. So Victor Davis Hanson is half right. The question is Trump willing to bomb them? More than a love tap, but it's more than that. Is Trump willing to bomb them so much that the regime is threatened? Is he willing to kill them, the actual leaders, to do assassinations, like was done on the first day of the war when they killed Khamenei? That's the type of force, the only thing they fear is the loss of their regime. So the only credible force that will work as an inducement to them or as a deterrent, I don't believe there's anything that will. I think you have to take the regime down. But even if you're thinking that way, it's not enough to threaten by destroying some bridges like he was talking about. It's not enough. And the Trump administration is learning that lesson. They're learning that lesson right now. I made a video earlier today about how Iran is just denying they agreed to anything pretty much. Let's go on. He's got more to say here. But this to me is the whole game right here. The whole question is, do they believe that Trump will actually attack them? And there, let me finish the thought before we move on. And the sad answer is that they are actually pretty confident that Trump is so against doing anything kinetic that he's not going to, and that if he does, it'll be very limited and very short term. And they could weather that storm. It's true, there was some bombing for a couple of days that brought them to the negotiating table, but then they didn't, but then they just messed around at the negotiating table. So that's where we are. So let's play a little more of this.
They have a whole list of targets that we haven't even touched, but you can shut down that entire economy in 2 days if you hit them. You take out 2 big power plants in Tehran and you're in big trouble. And you take out the power, where's all these missile factories and where are they getting their power? It's on the grid. You hit them and they're in trouble. So we can do that. And if he's going to do it, it doesn't really matter. All he has to say is, we can't control what you do, but if we decide you're funding terrorists that attack us, if we find that you're building missiles that are launching, he doesn't have to have them in the memorandum of agreement. If you dare, he should have the nuclear enrichment and he should have the straits. Meanwhile, he's telling the UAE and the Israelis and the Turks, hey, you guys, you all have avenues for pipelines. Get to it. So double your capacity, Saudi, to ship out the Red Sea. Triple your capacity, UAE, you're on the right side of the Strait of Hormuz. Go straight into the Persian Gulf and double that. And then Turkey, get a long pipeline into the oil fields. You can do it. And Israel, cut a deal and go right out of Haifa and do it now. So the next time they do it, we're not over a barrel. And
Now, this is a very important point, and it could have to do with Trump's entire strategy about this MOU, because the MOU is so lopsided in Iran's direction, and that's what everyone's been up in arms about since it was announced, that I'm starting to think that maybe Trump doesn't even care about all the concessions in there because he knew the deal was going to fall apart anyway, and that he just wanted to get the Straits of Hormuz opened so that we can open them, and believing that once we get them open this time, we can put the right mechanisms in place that the damage to the global economy, the damage to oil prices could be mitigated next time the Iranians close the strait, or the strait gets closed for whatever reason, like if the Americans close it, or there's just a war going on there and ships are afraid to go through, whatever the reasons are. I think that Trump might just be buying time, while at the same time counting on the Saudis, the Emiratis, etc., to ramp up alternative routes to get oil out of the area. So that's a good point.
I think they're doing that. Final thing is, we don't care what the left says, because on one day he's Hitler and the next day he's Neville Chamberlain. Hakeem Jeffries can't figure that out. Oh, he's a chicken. He tacoed out. Trump always chickens out. The next day he's Neville Chamberlain. Oh, we didn't get anything. Oh, this was a useless preemptive war that was we're striking a school, all this stuff. It's just whatever Trump's for, that you don't pay any attention to it. But on the right, what they're doing is they're getting attacked in two places. So the Steve Bannon, Tucker, Candace, Megyn Kelly, podcasters, and some politicians are angry that they did anything at all. So now it's like, we didn't want you to do anything, but now you haven't done anything. They've done a lot. They keep thinking that this is like the Obama deal, when Iran was ascendant, convinced that Obama wouldn't lift a finger militarily, and they had all this infrastructure. They're devastated. It's not this. They're not in 2016, and Trump isn't Obama. He's got a lot more assets at his disposal. He doesn't have some crazy idea that he's going to champion a Shia alternate crescent to rival the moderate Arab regimes in Israel and empower Damascus, Tehran, Gaza, Beirut. That was Obama, Valerie Jarrett's, Ben Rhodes' idea. So there's a lot of assets, but people have to realize that he's under a lot of pressure. If he loses the House, and the history says 38 out of the last 41 midterms, the N party lost seats. If he loses the House, number one, they're going to impeach him on day one. I don't mean that literally, but it's going to start. Number two, they're going to call in the entire Trump family, and they have the power of subpoena, and they're going to tie him. So he's getting House members, and they're saying to him, believe it or not, Mr. President, given our redistricting, that we're going to beat these guys, the red is going to win, and given the racial gerrymandering, it's going to stop some of that, and given that no one likes this socialist agenda that their radical candidates are promoting, and given that the price of oil is going down $75 a barrel, 65 is break even. They're down to $4 a gallon, below $4. It was only, I think, $3.30. They're saying to President, we can win. We have a chance of doing the incredible. We can win, but you can't stay in there too long. If you stay in there too long and you have to and the price of oil goes up, we're dead. So cut a deal, and then if you have to do something, just do it a day or two at a time, and keep the strait open.
Okay, see, therein lies the problem. As I said, the Iranians are not so concerned about here and there being a day or two of heavy bombing. They're not, because that doesn't threaten to bring down the regime, and it's not going to make them capitulate on these demands. They're not going to allow inspectors in to the key sites that they need to get into. They're not going to allow the enriched uranium to be brought out of the country. They're not going to stop having Hezbollah attack Israel. They're not going to stop with the proxies. They're just not going to agree. They are not going to capitulate to the American demands. And unless there's a credible threat, not just a force, but a force that could threaten the regime. And maybe that's what Trump would have in mind on those 1 or 2 days of bombing here and there to actually bring down such major pieces of infrastructure, like he talked about power plants, that those themselves do threaten the regime. Maybe that's the thinking. But that's a real tightrope that Trump will be walking there. But what he's saying here is that, look, the Republicans need the price of oil to stay low so that they could win. And I appreciate that. The worst thing would be if we return to kinetic now and it turned the American public against Trump. And then because of that, the Republicans lost the House and the Senate, or one of them. That would be a disaster. And we can't afford that. No one can afford that. Israel can't afford that. We can't have that happen. So I appreciate the bind that we're in. I'm not advocating for Trump to go back to full-scale kinetic action and bring down the regime now. I'm not advocating that. What I am saying is that this reminds us that the original sin of this whole situation was stopping the war on April 8th. That was the original sin. Because as he's saying, these legislators are basically saying to Trump, make it quick. It would have been quick. Drive to victory. Bring them down. Eliminate this regime. That could have been done. It could have been in our rearview mirror already. But that's not where we are. So, yeah, there has to be a credible threat of force. The Iranians have to know that it's coming, but it has to be so devastating that it would give them an incentive to give in on some of these demands, which they see as a mortal threat to their regime. Which means that the credible threat of force has to be a threat of force that itself would threaten the regime. Because what they're looking at is capitulation to American demands brings down the regime. That's how they see it. Versus suffering tremendous damage, but the regime stays intact. They're going to pick that every time. So yeah, Trump's in a bit of a bind. It's a really tight spot he's in. And yeah, just more to think about in the days ahead. So this is, I keep saying the same thing. This story is far, far from over. There are many twists and turns yet ahead of us. So keep watching.